Business ethics is a subset of both business studies and philosophical studies. Ethics, of course, is the philosophical field that deals with questions of right and wrong. Morality is another word, of course, for ethics. Ethics is the application of particular values that society and individuals find to be important in living life. And you have integrity, you have ethical or moral integrity, if you apply these values and principles evenly and rationally in society and in your daily life. Business ethics is specifically a branch of philosophical ethics that deals, of course, obviously, with how businesses should behave ethically. Now, there are those who believe that business is somehow entirely separate or outside of ethics. There are some who have said that the only ethical responsibility that business has is to make money for the business stakeholders. And these are always politically laden ideas here when we talk about pretty much anything in terms of business ethics. And you have within, shall we say, conservative or right-wing political sides of things, this notion that business is only accountable to itself. I'll talk about law in just a second here. But in general, most people will acknowledge the reality that business has to do with human beings, and human beings have to deal with each other in terms of ethical issues. Now, it would be wonderful if ethical issues were simple matters of right and wrong, but it's seldom perfectly clear what right and wrong actions are. Philosophy can argue about ethics a lot because, well, ethical issues are complex, and business ethical issues are complex also. So anything that we deal with in terms of business ethics, just like normal ethics, can have obviously right answers, obviously wrong answers, but a whole lot more of, well, it depends upon the situation and what's really going on. So in this course, what we're going to be dealing with is business ethical matters, but understanding that there are more than just simple right and wrong answers. Now, one aspect, of course, of morality and ethics is the issue of laws. The reason why human society institute laws, both in the political sense of and the legal sense of morality, is that we wish to codify and make more clear the difficult aspects of making moral decisions. If there is a law in the books to which everyone can refer to which everyone is responsive to, then maybe that makes society a little bit easier to navigate for all the individuals involved. But law is different from morality. And the reason why we say this is that when you look at what law says, the law can never fully cover all aspects of situations such that the ethical principles behind the laws are applied fully and evenly. That's why the field of law is itself incredibly complex. How do laws apply? There are a lot of things in life that are immoral, but not illegal. And there are a lot of things that are illegal, which are perfectly moral. And though there is a strong overlap between morality and law, there is a lot of either or there. There's a lot of morality outside of the law and the law outside of morality. We need look only at things that are legal but not immoral. And of course, everyone's got to throw in Nazi Germany in there. Yeah, it was illegal to persecute Jews. It was illegal to persecute homosexuals. It was illegal to persecute liberals and socialists. Throw them in jail. Throw them into concentration camps. Execute them. That was legal. Most people would say that's not ethical. Just because something is legal doesn't make it right. Look at apartheid in South Africa. Look at slavery and segregation in the United States. And of course, the law has to constantly adapt to change to situations and try to mirror what we consider ethical in life, in the legal code. Now, business likes to say that, well, we follow the law, and as long as you follow the law, everything's fine. But again, if the law is not a perfect overlap with ethics, then we have to not just think about, well, I obeyed the law, but we have to think about, well, what does the law not cover that ethics should cover, that our basic humanity to each other has to cover? And the legal field, which is really another field of philosophy, is constantly trying to adapt the law and interpret the law in ways that actually do keep up with our ethical sense. And ethics do change. They do. We'd like to believe as human beings that these certain ethical principles are permanent and universal things, but of course it's not that simple. Things change, and of course, because technology changes and new things are discovered all the time, we have to keep up with our ethics and our laws with these changes. 20 years ago, no one needed to think much about the ethics, much less the legalities of the online world. These things change. Technology changes, people change, situations change, the law and morality need to change in suit. However, there do seem to be some basic principles that apply all the time. And perhaps the strongest basic principle of all aspects of human morality is simply don't hurt other people. The basis of all the law and all the prophets and all the everything, Jesus said, was do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I'm not endorsing Christianity here because, of course, Buddhists have a very similar conception. It's slightly different because they say whatever you don't want done to you, don't do to anybody else. But that we can talk about the Christian golden rule and the Buddhist golden rule, which is followed by a lot of other religions as well. They have the same basic idea. We can see that fundamentally there is a core ethical idea within all human societies, which is that don't hurt other people. Be nice to other people. You don't want to be hurt. You don't want to be ripped off. You don't want to be killed. You don't want things stolen from you. So don't do it to others. Now, this aspect of business is outside of that. That's where it gets very, very tricky. Business decisions can harm people because business decisions are conducted by human beings, and human beings are, as you probably know, very highly capable of harming other people. Two quick cases to give an example. This is from 20, 25 years ago. Ford Motor Company. They had a car called the Pinto. They obviously retired the Pinto probably before all of your time. They knew that the Pinto was designed such that if a rear end collision occurred with enough force, the gas tank would explode. Now, most people would not want to buy, much less ride in, a car that has the strong potential of exploding upon impact. However, Ford knew that this was the case, the design flaw in the Pinto, after the Pinto was rolled out and sold. To be fair, they didn't know beforehand. They didn't design it to explode. But knowing this, they looked at it and said, well, it would probably cost us more money to recall all the Pintos that are out there and fix the problem than to deal with lawsuits from people who had their Pintos explode and are suing us. So that's what they decided to do. We will not recall the Pinto. We will not fix the problem. We'll just deal with the lawsuits. Now, is that ethical? Is that legal? But it was a business decision that a corporation made. Another interesting case, of course, is Bernie Madoff. This, again, is probably before your time or pretty close to it. Bernie Madoff, short story, was a business investment advisor. And he ran what was called a Ponzi scheme. A Ponzi scheme is the idea that you get some investors, and then you get more investors, and you pay the initial investors with the money that you've got from the new investors. So it looks, you can point to these people, hey, they made a profit over there, these first people, and you use that as marketing to get more and more people involved in the scheme. The problem is that there's no real investment, there's no real project, there's no real profit for anybody except for the person running the scheme. Bernie Madoff built people out of an astonishing 50 billion with a B dollars, largest Ponzi scheme in history. And a lot of people lost a lot of money to him and never recovered it because, of course, he spent it. That's what you do when you rip off money, you spend it. He is currently serving. He recently was in the news, which is why I'm mentioning him. He's dying now. He's been in prison now for 18 years. He was in his 50s when he was acquitted, and he's dying now. So he wanted to be released, and the judge says no because he is serving a 150-year sentence. That's hard time. Again, is this moral? Is it legal? Obviously, it was illegal because he was convicted and thrown into prison for this. But again, here, somebody in business is making an ethical decision, and he hurt other people. And we can throw in here pollution. We can throw in workers' rights of not having a safe workspace. We can talk employment discrimination. We can talk about sex harassment, and we will talk about a lot of things. But a lot of these business ethical decisions that we'll be discussing are related to harming customers or harming employees through the specific decisions that businesses make. Now, when I say decisions that businesses make, I, of course, should be completely upfront that anytime a business makes a decision, there are people behind that. One of the very tricky things about our world today is that there is this legal, moral entity called the corporation. And a corporation is not a human being. It is a legal entity that is really just nothing more than a financial entity. But of course, corporations can, on the one hand, act entirely separate from any individual culpability for their actions, which is why you set up a corporation, because you get legal indemnity for the corporation's actions. But on the other hand, a corporation can only do something if people running the corporation do it. So this intermixing of corporate responsibility and personal responsibility is something that we'll discuss as well. Now, corporations must be involved in ethical decision making. And as I mentioned earlier, the law is not enough. Values are not necessarily reflected in the law. Ethical responsibility is not necessarily reflected in the law. You can obey the law by the letter and maybe not really follow the spirit of that law, which of course is ultimately don't harm other people. Ideally, everyone involved in all aspects of life should be ethically good people who make ethical decisions because they care about other human beings and do not wish to harm other beings. This is true in business as well. We would like to see every business, no matter how big, no matter how small, run entirely by ethical people who are making ethical decisions. The problem, of course, as we will see throughout this course, is we will constantly run into situations where that's not the case. Now, you can obey the letter of the law and act like, oh yes, we really care. And we're doing things in our business, our corporation, to care. Now, Whole Foods, this may be a little unfair, or maybe it's a totally fair example, depending on how you look at it. Whole Foods has run into a lot of difficulty throughout its history with saying that, oh yes, we are a very ethical company, we care about our employees, we care about the environment, and then employees saying, not really, and environmentalists saying, not really. Now, Whole Foods was recently bought out by Amazon. And you have no doubt heard in the news, if you've been paying any attention at all, throughout the last couple of years, there's been a lot of talk about Amazon mistreating its employees. Now, we're not here to cast judgments as to whether Amazon is an ethical corporation or not. But that type of question is a question that we need to ask not just as students in this course, but as human beings who are members of society. So when Whole Foods talks about how we believe in interdependence of people, we believe in upholding people and the planet and environmental considerations and whatnot, it is your duty as a human being, whether you're a customer of Whole Foods or not, to ask, is that really true? And I'm not asking you to be for or against Whole Foods or any other corporation. We will talk about quite a few in this course, actually. But nevertheless, these are the decisions that we need to make as human beings in our daily lives.